Hello, you asked for the greasiest content on YouTube, and you are getting it because there's nothing much more greasy than tier lists and hot takes. And the other greasy thing is fighting game adaptations. Movies, cartoons, animes, cartoons, more movies, all of that stuff. I think about this topic way more than I should. We regularly bring it up on episodes of TKO. So we are going on a very different style of tier ranking for this. Because of course you start with godlike, right? Or that's where you ultimately try to end up to be. Very few things are actually going to hear, because this is the good godlike. This is the actual, like, man, that was an amazing movie or adaptation of that video game, of that fighting game. And there's more adaptations of fighting games than any other genre in video gaming, I think. Champion, we have that I think there's one or two that can certainly fit in there. Master, say the dreams that I've been after. There's also a few there. Amateur, gonna be a lot of those.
I have seen the amateur, and it is you.
Loser, this is just not even worth watching. Garbage, which is really not worth watching. Then we go back to godlike. These are things that are so bad that they come highly, highly recommended. And we got quite a few fighting game adaptations. So we might as well start off at the start with Street Fighter the movie, the animated movie. It's just called Street Fighter 2 movie, I believe, in Japan. It was just called Street Fighter 2 the animated movie to distinguish it, I guess. So this is pretty much the progenitor of where a lot of things get measured up, especially when it comes to non-live action stuff. In terms of anything cartoon, anime, animated, whatever. A lot of people grew up with this. A lot of people grew up with Chun-Li fighting Vega, Chun-Li's shower scene. There's lots of iconic scenes in this. When you watch this movie, it's actually quite boring for the most part. There's lots of just really slow scenes, and the story is kind of meh. It's pretty simple. That being said, that's not entirely a bad thing. You watch it and it's kind of a feat of animation, if anything. An amazing soundtrack, but only in the American Western versions. I don't really care for the Japanese soundtrack that much. It's KMFDM! Alice in Chains, Korn! You can't top that! That being said, it does have some slowness to it. It does have some like wonky voice acting from a few characters. Ryu, specifically. There's lots of weird takes in it where he just sounds odd.
What's this shadow law? You don't know? Nope.
And there's lots of like awkwardness and it's hard to like take yourself away from 90s video game anime, adaptations at that time. That's kind of par for the course. I think right now I'm going to put that at champion. I think there's a few things that hold it back. Cammy just being in it for 2 seconds and actually being around and never being referenced again. There's lots of little things that's like, that's not great. But I think the positives more than outweigh the negatives. Soundtrack, again, absolute banger. You can make love to that soundtrack any day of the week. So champion is where that will sit. Next up, we have the Van Damme Street Fighter. This is godlike. This is godlike bad. I think that goes without saying. As a kid, I hated this movie growing up. I was so disappointed. I got myself hyped the fuck up for. I bought the magazine that like it was just like a basically a propaganda magazine. It said like all the bone crushing, skull splitting moves in the movie. I'm like, no, none of that happened. All the memes, all the fun stuff.
But for me, it was Tuesday.
Yeah, the fighting is shit. It's really rough, but they only had like, a month to train most of the actors. It has earned its place in the pantheon of these sort of things. And you can't really get much better than it for like corny, dumb action that you roll your eyes with. But it's so quintessential 90s, like 94 this was, end of 94, peak time for cinema. So I'm very happy with godlike. Mortal Kombat. The 1995 banger. There's not much to complain about, all honesty. It's just better than Street Fighter in terms of sticking closer to the source material. I wish it had a higher budget. I wish sets looked nicer, but they made what they could make. I'm actually gonna say it's godlike, and a lot of that is nostalgia. I've seen some people be like, no, this is the greatest, it's the GOAT. And I see some people like, no, it was always bad and it will always be bad. So there's a bit of divisiveness there, but I'm comfortable with Godlike. I don't think many other things are going to get close to it. In terms of actually being good, in terms of actually being tongue-in-cheek, made to be sort of like that with, you know, a serious overtone. I think it kind of nails the feeling of Mortal Kombat. Even modern Mortal Kombat has a feel like this. There's jokes in there, but it's not too heavily reliant on it. Some of the special effects have really aged out, and a lot of them, not a lot of them, but some are Goro falling off the cliff. Yo, are you kidding me? No, that looked bad back then. It looks even worse today, but you still can't help but love this one. Are there actual flaws? Yeah, there's a few things here and there, but it's not enough for even me to remember them. So Mortal Kombat being godlike is very appropriate to me. Mortal Kombat: The Journey Begins. This is the animated video that like released alongside the movie. This is just straight up garbage. I can't have fun with this because it's so bad. There are bits that are like, that's funny, like, you know, that's meme worthy or whatever, but overall it's just terrible. Like, it's hard to fathom how cheaply it was made and how bad the 3D fights are. The animation is like just the most bottom shelf shit you can ever imagine. Larry Kasanoff, you know? Spared no expense. There is a bit of nostalgia with this because I did rent this back in the day. When you think about nostalgia, it's like actually think about what you felt when you watched it. And I remember hating this. I remember really being, you know, psyched the hell up. I was, you know, drinking my Mountain Dews and eating my pizza. Rented this, watched it at a sleepover, I believe, and we're all like, let's just turn this off and let's just play Mortal Kombat 2. Aside from a few memeable instances, it's barely worth watching. And like, even though it's like an hour-long video or something, I think that the last 25 minutes is just like all advertisements and like commercials and shit. So we're starting on the greatest trilogy of all time, the Fatal Fury trilogy. This is Fatal Fury: Legend of the Hungry Wolf. This is the very first one, and it's the weakest. I feel comfortable with it in amateur. There's lots of other funny bits in there, but the animation is a little rough. It's on the rougher side. There's weird things like, why is Andy Bogart's hair silver? It was never silver in any of the games. I don't know who fucked up there.
Boy, I really hope somebody got fired for that blunder.
It's not given enough attention in the thing that you came to watch. Terry Bogard versus Geese Howard. It's kind of a letdown, their fight. It's like a couple of moves and then that's kind of it. Especially looking back on it nowadays, it's like, no, like Terry versus Geese should have a much more epic final showdown than what they got. So, but in terms of a trilogy, you got to start somewhere, and I think Legend of the Hungry Wolf is a promising beginning, and it remains to be seen if they can top that. They did top it with Fatal Fury: The New Battle. This is basically an adaptation of Fatal Fury 2. I have a review of this on my mattmcmuscles channel. This is an easy master. It has much more improved animation, has a better overall story, and Terry and Wolfgang Krauser's fight has a lot of build-up. The movie's basically centered around that, and it's done in a better way than Legend of the Hungry Wolf. Mai is also in it, so there's that, and the fights are also much more improved. Voice acting is also improved across the board. I am very happy with that in Master. I hope you all would agree. Now it's time to get serious, because this is Fatal Fury, the motion picture. Despite this, you know, very much getting away from what Fatal Fury is, you know, tournaments against the big bad, this is a globe-trotting adventure a bunch of OCs Masami Obari made. It's a champion, easy. Okay, it's got unbalanced animation. It's a lot of the in-between stuff is a little weird and kind of rough here and there, but the overall animation quality is excellent. Was theatrically released in Japan. Of course, my scenes, you know, got me through my developmental history. I'm sure she helped many of you watching this. And even though these are a bunch of OCs, I like them, like almost all of them. I don't hate any of them. None of them are super annoying, I guess. The only thing I can really say about this that I hate about this is that it pumps up and makes it look like a sequel is coming with the return of Geese Howard, and that never materialized, but I can't really hold that against it. It's still an epic sweeping tale. It's got violence, it's got nudity, it has humor, it's all balanced quite well, and it's still pretty enjoyable. There are some slow scenes, but other than that, mwah, love this thing. Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Here's the thing with Mortal Kombat Annihilation. It's like one of the worst ever. It's not so bad that it goes into godlike territory. There's still bits where you're just like, oh, this is hard to watch. It is still funny though.
Too bad you will die.
There is still entertainment to be had, but I can't put it on the same level as Street Fighter the movie with Van Damme. I'm not sure if it's garbage though. I think it might balance out. Maybe just Loser. It's like in the middle there. I want it to be the type of thing where I can just laugh at and like, oh, this is hilarious. But there's some bits that are just so fucking shitty, and some characters are so throwaway and like cool characters you wanted to see. I think a lot of this has to do with my nostalgia, but my anti-nostalgia. I got a bad report card that one year in 97, and my parents were like, you can't go see the movie then because you did poorly. And I'm like, yeah, that's fair. And then after a while, I didn't get a new report card, but I think I did better on a test like the following month, and it's still in theaters. And I went to go see it, and no, I didn't even see it in theaters. No, we rented it. We had to rent it on VHS. I saw The Jackal when I got that better test result. But yeah, there's certainly bits in here that are funny. I hate all the casting choices, all the new characters casting choices. I hate how the cyborg ninjas have no story. Like, it was just done so shittily. Street Fighter is just better balanced. All the characters presented do have some type of backstory. It's a better movie in all regards. Technically, I think the fighting is all right in some scenes, but it relies way too much on wire stuff. Bad wire stuff, I should clarify. So I think Loser. It's better than, I guess, Mortal Kombat The Journey Begins, but not by much. So I think that makes sense. Mortal Kombat Conquest, the TV show. Some of you I've seen in prior videos where I mentioned this. I'm like, no, this is great. I watched it again, like the first 5 episodes. I bought like this weird like bootleg DVD I got in Los Angeles, I think. And I tried to watch it, and it's like, it's awful. Like, it's just boring. Maybe it got better in the other seasons or the other episodes. I think it only lasted 2 seasons. I can't remember now. But the first 5 episodes were really bad. But I watched all of it as a kid. I'd make sure to watch when like Wrath came on from WCW. They introduced like Noob Sabat for like a second, and then like, you know, Quan Chi and Shao Kahn came into it at the very, very end. I'm sad it never got like a continuation. I'd like to have seen where it would go. But the fact it takes place way in the past, and like they're just kind of goose, all 3 main characters. Like Kristana Loken was a revelation in her role as Taya, I forget her name. Anyway, it's just the most low budget cable TNT show ever. Maybe I should give it another chance and watch beyond the first 5 episodes. They're so boring. They're so long. Like the pilot's like an hour and like 20 minutes. It just felt like forever. So I don't particularly like this, but I think it's better than Mortal Kombat Annihilation. Overall, I think there is a charm to it that Mortal Kombat Annihilation lacks, or it's just lazy and made so shittily, but this is like slightly more love poured into it, so I think that's fair. Defenders of the Realm. This is the USA Network cartoon show. When I put up a poll for Patreons, vote for Defenders of the Realm. I'd love to give that a goosey again. As a cartoon, I think I might just leave it here at amateur. There's a lot of silly, stupid shit that's not even like entertainment silly. It's just kind of to overuse an overused word, cringy. There's some episodes that are really good, but it's like Scorpion barely features in this because this is mostly modeled after Mortal Kombat 3. And when he does show up, I guess when Ultimate Mortal Kombat 3 came out, he just gets 1 episode, and that's fucking lame. I don't expect him to be a good guy or whatever, but he's in like 1 episode. Like, fuck you. And so much emphasis being placed on Stryker and Nightwolf, and there's no Kung Lao. I don't think Kung Lao is in this. And some of the voice acting is not so great. Some of it's good. Like, you got Clancy Brown in there, you got Ron Perlman, so there's some good stuff. It should have been better, but it's still solid watch, I think. And I'd love to know what Ketchup and Mustard know about this show. I'd be so happy if they've never seen it. Maybe I can make that happen. Street Fighter, the animated. series. This is the very much the same ilk as Mortal Kombat Defenders of the Realm. Long history with this show. It basically started my career on YouTube. I'm gonna put this in Godlike basically because it's a sequel to the Van Damme movie. And yeah, it's so bad that it's good. There's probably only like a handful of episodes that are actually bad, like boring bad, but the vast majority of it has so many errors, so much stupid shit happening, so much bad voice acting, terrible fight choreography, just ridiculous plots, like relatives that you never heard before. Here's Ryu's cousin. You know she's Ryu's cousin because she also has a headband. But I can't fault it for any reason. I wish it just continued. I wish they just kept going. They should still be making this today. I would love that. They go all in on the G.I. Joe versus Cobra stuff, and it's glorious. It's like the ultimate culmination of what Steven E. D'Souza was trying to build with the major motion picture here. I love it. The recent release, or recent, but a couple years ago, released by Discotek. It's an amazing release. Oh yeah, go check out Fatal Fury, the motion picture, because it has my commentary track on it that I did with Brady Hartel, which is really, really fun to do. That's also in the Discotek Blu-ray release. But yeah, as for Street Fighter, it's too close to my heart. It's got to stay there. Street Fighter 2 V or Street Fighter 2 Victory. I remember renting this. I watched a few episodes about, a few years ago. But when I rented this as a kid, I remember not liking it. I remember thinking it was kind of boring, and I kind of wanted Street Fighter, the animated movie again. You didn't quite get that. Some characters have a lot of weird redesigns. Charlie especially. Chun-Li sort of weird. God, Cammy's in there for a bit. It has been a long time since I've watched all of it, but with that in your mind, with that in my mind, I think it at least has to be amateur. I think I have to balance my nostalgia of watching like stuff like the Fatal Fury animes, which I watched like backwards and forwards a ton of times, and this being like, a bigger investment. I can't put it in loser because that's more negative, so I'm just going to leave it in amateur. I don't think it's up to master. Like, that's my personal take on it. But, if there's missing gems of episodes in there, I just remember an episode where Bison was just powering up for it was Frieza levels on Namek powering up. It just took forever. Let me know if I'm off base on that. You guys always do in these tier lists, but I think amateur is where it shall stay. Tekken, the motion picture, the animated motion picture. I still don't think this is very good at all. It's probably some of the worst animation in anything we're going to be covering. I like some of the soundtrack choices, but the art style of the characters, I really, really dislike it. It's a rough watch. There's some memeable things, of course, like Heihachi biting an axe in two.
Oh no!
But the fighting is also really, really poor. I can understand if you had nostalgia watching this as a kid. I mean, I watched it as a kid too. I must have been like 14 years old. I remember really, really hating this. And when I watched it again for a review on my main channel, I was like, no, this is still fucking stupid. Like, everything any character says is usually dumb and makes no sense.
Lions push their cubs over a cliff and raise only the ones that climb back up.
And it tries way too hard to be cool and edgy and serious. But like its visuals and all of its weird animation quirks and such, like it's too goofy. This should have been like a fucking slam dunk though. If this had like the animation quality and like seriousness of like, I don't know, like Ninja Scroll or like Wicked City, and be really dark like that and like super violent and have that amount of money, it could have been really sick. And Tekken should be a slam dunk, but like, I just think it's kind of bad. But it's not garbage, so fortunately there's going to be better Tekken stuff later on and maybe some worse, so I think loser is where I'm going to put it. Darkstalkers, the animated series. I recently completed a Let's Watch of this, of every episode, on my Patreon. It was a wild ride. I'm going to say this is just straight up garbage. It does not have the same charm as Street Fighter the animated series, because it's like the characters there are like mostly actually on par with kind of, how they'd act. Because there's an inherent silliness to Street Fighter. There is an inherent silliness to Darkstalkers in the games, but it's just slightly handled differently, and it just doesn't translate very well for a silly Saturday morning cartoon show. Just werewolves and vampires, like, it just straddles this line of not being satisfying to anybody. Fans of the games, fans of horror, fans of Saturday cartoons, it pleases absolutely no. Everyone's mad. You know, Pyron being a goof, Dimitri being a goof. All these bad guys can win constantly, all the fucking time, if they just stopped being idiots. But they're not. They're all idiots. So, yeah, that's garbage. I did not really enjoy my time. And stupid kid insert Harry whatever, Harry Grimoire. I fucking hate this stupid blonde kid. He ruins every episode he's in. If he wasn't in the show, I'd probably like it a little bit more. I'd probably like it a lot more. If they deleted this kid from the universe, this would probably be higher. So you fucked up, Darkstalkers, the animated series. You are straight up trash. Darkstalkers, the OVA animes. This isn't much better. This isn't much better. Its animation is amazing. Like, if Tekken looked like this, it would be like Tekken would have been so much better, right? But its story falls apart after the first episode. It's just nonsense happening. It's hard to follow. There's long bouts of flashbacks that don't matter. There's just long stretches of nothing happening. It's 4 episodes that are around 40 minutes each, something like that. And after the first episode, you just are like unsatisfied by the end of every single one. And fights are really brief too. When they do happen, they're animated brilliantly. And it's exciting, but they don't last very long. And it's like such gorgeous box art, and the designs are so on point, and the intro's amazing, the outro's just as good, if not better. But its story and its pacing are like some of the worst, actually. It's not garbage, though. I have to put it up at least at loser. I want this to be higher. If you guys haven't watched this in a long time, watch it again. It's a slog to get through. You could finish all of Darkstalkers, the animated American series, by the time you finish this. It feels like, at least. That's not actually technically true, but yeah, at least Trouble Man features prominently in both things, so I can't take that away from them.
Gonna be trouble, but baby, I'm the man.
Toshinden, the OVA. I think sometimes this might have been sold as like a motion picture, the animated movie or something. It's another Masami Obari joint, so it's immediately Navaster. No, it's not. I'm gonna just put this straight up an amateur. There, of course, is a shower scene, as is in the Masami Obari tradition, but it lacks the hype music of Toshinden. Some of its designs of the characters just don't really like fit that well. It's got this desaturated look to a lot of it that the Fatal Fury enemies don't have. They're bright and colorful. But this Toshinden one, I just remember a lot of muted scenes that were just unexciting. There's drab backgrounds for a lot of it. The story is all right from what I remember. It has been a good long while since I've seen it, but I remember I rented it at the time. I remember watching it later as a young man and being like, oh, that kind of sucks. Because you think from Masami Obari, you think it'd be just as exciting as like the movie or the new battle. But it's just not. And fortunately, unlike Darkstalkers, this is way, way shorter. So that's why I think I'm putting it higher. It's slightly better than Tekken. It's slightly better, but not by much. But I have to give it the edge just because I think it's like you have bigger expectations with Tekken and it fails them, for at least for me. In Toshinden, your expectations are a little bit lower. So yeah, I believe the amateur is Toshinden. Samurai Showdown, the motion picture. This thing is goofy as hell. Like, this is almost godlike in how bad it is, because it's got like one of the roughest localizations into English. Like, it's ridiculous the shit that they say. Much like the localized early Sam Show games, I think this is a loser. I think this is a big loser. Not garbage, though, because I think there's an inherent silliness there, and Sam Show kind of almost fits that, straddles the line. It's difficult to say. But yeah, I think it's very loserish in that regard. Samurai Showdown, the OVA. This was kind of a weird follow-up, but not really. This focuses on Shiki, I believe. I watched it the one time. It was pretty inoffensive. Not nearly the silliness, and I don't think it got translated into English officially. I think it didn't have a dub at the very least. I'm pretty sure. So that helps in some regards. I remember it being more serious and kind of a more focused story and just a few characters. So I think by default that should bring it to amateur. Art of Fighting. This This is a hard one. This might be garbage. Ryo Sakazaki is very different depiction in here. King does appear in this particular one, which is always a plus. And Mr. Big and his pegging also prominently appear in this, but it's just a silly kidnapping tale with no high stakes, no tournament even. To be fair, Art of Fighting 1 didn't really focus on a tournament. It was just really finding Yuri in Southtown, and that was kind of it. But it's like, take a few liberties, do something a bit grander. I don't know, but yeah, this one's like really rough in animation. It's very short. I think it's essentially another OVA, so it's like 40 minutes or something. Its localization, its voice acting is also really early 90s. It's of the same quality as Samurai Showdown, but I think it's worse than Samurai Showdown because at least that was like a motion picture story and had a bit of epicness to it. There's just weird designs, like Ryo wears a jacket most of the time, and it doesn't even have most of the characters, I think, from the first game. I think there may be like a few missing. Yeah, it's a rough one. I remember wanting to like this a lot when I first rented it as a kid, and even back then I was like, oof, no, not for me. Give me some more Fatal Fury the motion picture, please. Virtua Fighter, the anime series. So this is interesting because there's really not much to do with Virtua Fighter. So whatever you do is kind of like not going to disappoint you that much, but it's still a much more silly endeavor than an adventure than you would think that Virtua Fighter would get. But I guess that's all they can really do. You don't get much from these characters in the games, especially when this was made, which was around Virtua Fighter 2 time. Akira is a hot dog eating champion. That's got to be something. I think I'll put that up to amateur as well. It's definitely not master. I think Virtua Fighter, you probably could have done like maybe a nice little movie about a tournament and like, I don't know, someone killing Akira's like master and he's trying to find whoever killed him and, like get Doral mixed up in there. I don't really think this is amazing, but it's certainly not like in loser territory. Yeah, definitely not to Tekken's level or Mortal Kombat Annihilation's level. We could be due, not for a new Virtua Fighter game. No, Sega would never do that. They might license this out one day and like, although maybe we could squeeze some money out of Virtua Fighter that way. Whatever it takes from making us not having to make the game. Power Stone, the animated series. When this was on, I think this was on YTV in the early 2000s. I remember liking this. Power Stone does lend itself well to an anime or Saturday morning cartoon. In that traditional Metabots like sort of spirit. Not a loser, not an amateur. I don't know how this ended. I don't remember watching the last few episodes. I watched like a bunch, like 2010-ish or something like that. I remember like getting a bunch of AVI files for it. I remember watching a bunch of it. I just put it on and like do chores or whatever. I remember liking it, but I think, it has a slightly disservice of being a series. I think I would have liked a big grand adventure movie, like a One Piece style movie. I think that's what they're kind of going for, a One Piece sort of feel to this, but I can't actually put it at master. No, not as memorable to me as Fatal Fury: The New Battle. Is there a bit of franchise bias in there? Yeah, a little bit. I mean, like hell, I love Power Stone, but I can't say I was in love with the characters and their story in terms of like, their backgrounds and their motivations. Like, they're just fun character designs. So I will say that its actual animation style, worked really well to emulate the game. So I'd like to put that higher, but I don't think I can. So that's another amateur for me. Street Fighter Alpha, the motion pit. It's longer than an OVA. There's problems with this, but this is a lot of nostalgia for this one. So I'm going to put this up at master. I love the scene with Akuma. I really wish Akuma was the main bad guy and not some fucking rando doctor, and there not being a little kid running around. Stop putting little kids in these things, please. I don't know why Chun-Li is wearing red in this. It really bothers me to this day, but Rose is in it, Alpha Ken is in it, Sakura is in it. There's a few fun cameos towards the end. It is a very focused tale on Ryu and his past, and his connection with Ken and his connection with the killing intent. It's just that the final boss is so lame, you know, just being some weirdo scientist no one's ever heard of. Why not just have it be Bison or like anybody else? Sagat, I don't know, like anybody but fucking that guy. I don't know. It still has a huge wave of nostalgia for me. I still really like the animation style in this one because it fits with a lot of the alpha like concept art that they made for those games. I remember it being strong voice acting too. I think Ken was voiced by Steve Bloom, and he does a great job. Like, underrated voice for Ken there.
Hey, that's right. Come to think of it, what about Daddy? Mommy can't have a baby all alone, you know. Mom and Dad gotta give a little.
So yeah, I still like this one quite a bit. I did watch it like 5-6 years ago. I'd like to watch it again, maybe do a full review on it on the Fighting Game Theater, but I'm happy with that at Master. Street Fighter Alpha Generations. My favorite story about this is that officials from Manga Entertainment were here to debut the first screening of this movie at EVO 2006. And it was basically Mystery Science Theater. People in the crowd were laughing at it, heckling it, you know, talking mad shit. And like, I always remember some description on SRK of like saying like, oh, the Manga Entertainment guy was furious. He was just spitting and stomping. Why don't they like this cool thing? It's not cool. It's terrible. This one's really, really bad. I hate the animation style. Ken appears in it for like 2 minutes. Sakura gets her ass beat in this. There's a bunch of weird OCs running around. I think they're vaguely related to some concept art you'd see for Akuma's origin. The voice acting's bad. The fighting is not great. It's just a weird thing. It pisses me off that this is one of the last Street Fighter animes that we got of that age, of the 2000s. There was like one or two which we'll discuss later, but this, for a while I thought this was it, because these two things were released when Street Fighter was essentially dead. There were no new games coming out. This was like 2001, 2003, 4, and I just hate this thing. I mean, if any of you out there like it, why am I talking about it's garbage? If you like it, I'm very happy for you, but I also don't know what you're possibly thinking. Probably the worst adaptation of Street Fighter. I know these two are down here technically, but you can see what I'm doing here. Speaking of Street Fighter anime, Street Fighter 4, The Ties That Bind. I believe you could only get this in the collector's edition of Street Fighter 4. I think they, Capcom uploaded it to their Japanese YouTube channel or something like that. Anyway, you can't easily buy this, but it's not amazing. It's not Master. It's quite boring for the most part. Like, just all of the anime endings and intros from Street Fighter 4, just give those people more time to make the same stuff. Stilted, awkward silences, really low budget animation, fairly strong character design. Like, it's still very accurate. And the story was just kind of nothing. It was just Guile, Ryu, Chun-Li, and Cammy just trying to be like, where's Seth? What is happening? Where's Shadaloo? And just a bunch of random scenes would occur, and then just have a fight with Seth. A really quick fight with Seth, and that was kind of it. It was pretty unsatisfying. Still, it was a bonus for getting a collector's edition of a game, and it was like feature length, I think. It was at least like an hour and 10 minutes, so it's not nothing. There's significance there in terms of its length, but its actual content is not great. I'm actually going to put this in loser. It has been a while since I watched it. This might be another one I do for a full review in the future. In 2009, I remember getting this and being really disappointed with it. It's just like, this is just kind of nothing. I fell asleep watching this, and I was with a friend that came from out of town. We're watching, oh, let me put this on. Okay, I've never seen this. What is this? Yeah, it's a Street Fighter 4 anime. And they're like, what? And I put it on. I remember looking at them like, 15 minutes in, they're out cold, and then I was out cold. So it doesn't say a lot for Street Fighter 4, The Ties That Bind. What is a bit better is the Jury OVA. This was a Japanese exclusive with Super Street Fighter 4. It basically tells
the story of Juri, her being inserted into the Street Fighter 4 timeline, a bit of her background and stuff, and it's just basically like a little pocket side story that kind of slips in between Street Fighter 4 and Street Fighter Ultra Street Fighter. I remember this being a good deal better. It's shorter for one, which is good. I think it's just called the Juri OVA. Something like 40 minutes, maybe 45. And I remember this being tight. It had Juri features prominently in it. Was localized too, I believe, with a dub. So I remember thinking this was pretty decent. And it has been a while. I think if I was to review these Street Fighter 4 animes, I just combine them both into like one review and say, oh yeah, and this too, because I think they're very like brother sister like stories and stuff. But I 100% believe this was more entertaining overall. So, but it's still not at master level. You know what else isn't at master level? Street Fighter The Legend of Chun-Li. This is very confident that this is just straight up garbage. Did a full review of this with my good friend Matthew. This is pretty much unwatchable. It has none of the charm, none of the fun of the Van Damme movie. It's just boring. Like, the story is just boring. Really bad voiceover from the Smallville woman. The worst version of Vega, the worst version of Bison, the worst version of Gen, of Charlie, the worst versions of everybody. This was part of Capcom's big push for Street Fighter 4. Like, oh, we gotta get a movie in there too. Oh, Street Fighter 4, it did. This didn't even play in theaters. Like, this came out in theaters, like nowhere in my country, I think. I think if you get really drunk or high, you can enjoy this, but even then, I don't think so. Like, now it's like, no, this is way worse than these two at least. No, I'm gonna stick to my guns there. I wish I had another tier just for Street Fighter. You know what? There you go. Chun-Li shitfest. That's where you belong. I'm sorry. No, I'm not sorry. If anyone's like, oh, what are you, you're too harsh on it. No. Absolutely not. DOA, Dead or Alive. I think that's an amateur. It's definitely better than something like Mortal Kombat Annihilation. It's still lame. It's still really low budget. It's like a bad Charlie's Angels knockoff. But there's some fun to be had. The fighting is pretty decent, but it's still very schlocky. So I think that kind of evens out to amateur. And honestly, I don't have much more to say than that. Tekken, the motion picture, the live action motion picture. This is the same. This is the same to me. I have sort of a soft spot for this because I thought this was going to be absolute like bollocks, dog shit, rougher than a badger's ass, all these descriptors. But I don't think it's as bad as a lot of people think. Like, considering the state of video game movies, I think they came out with like a passable action movie, and that's about it. It's still missing a lot of the fun of Tekken, like no silly animals, you know, no really fun characters. It does play it a little try hard. There is some funny bits here and there, and I think its martial arts scenes are actually quite good, if not a little grounded in reality. And when I say grounded in reality, a lot of grounded punches. But yeah, like, I can't honestly say that it's better than DOA and vice versa, because they're both doing different things. This is more of a fun, silly, sexy romp, and this is more of like a serious thing, but they both do those things kind of well, at least in my opinion. But I know some people absolutely hate this. When I did the What Happened on this movie, I saw that very same opinion, and I actually saw people saying, oh, I thought it was pretty good for what it was, and yeah, kind of agree. Tekken 2, Kazuya's Revenge. So if you watch my What Happened about this was a completely different movie, and then they filmed a few extra scenes and changed a few names around, and then it became a Tekken movie. It has very little to do with Tekken at all. It's a completely different actor playing the actor that played Kazuya in Tekken 1. It's bizarre, and you know what? It's just as bad as Chun-Li shitfest. It might even be worse. There you go. Yeah, it's worse than Chun-Li, I think, because at least there's some fun in that there's characters that are at least named after characters you've seen in the games, where it's like just Kazuya, I think Brian, and then Heihachi, but those two other characters like appear like once in it, as far as I remember. This is still looking like many of the other tier lists, where there's a lot of shit in the middle, and way less stuff up here and down there, but we're getting there. King of Fighters, the movie. I can't believe some people still don't know this exists. This is kind of godlike for me, and the reason for that is because it is so bad and doesn't take itself too seriously, but at the same time it is really serious, but it's just really bizarre, and all they change it so much, kind of like how Street Fighter changed into like G.I. Joe versus Cobra thing. So I'm actually gonna put this in godlike. Oh no, but if you really like King of Fighters, you're gonna hate this thing. I don't know, and I gotta go with my gut. This is so bad that it is entertaining, I have to say. Mortal Kombat Legacy, I'm kind of putting both 1 and 2 in there, and the weird Mortal Kombat revival, like, you know, teaser that got uploaded on the internet back in the day, which led into this. These things are strange. I think the web format does a disservice to anything that does this. It's just not the best medium to tell like stories like this. I do like how we'll have 1 or 2 episodes that are dedicated to a single character, but they don't really come back in that many forms, and it doesn't really present the most cohesive thing. Plus, I think, if I recall, season 2 ended on a cliffhanger, so you never even got a resolution, I think. Correct me if I'm wrong on that. They're not terrible, though. I don't think they're garbage, but they're kind of losery to me. I don't know. I don't remember enjoying them that much myself. I thought they were like, yeah, that's kind of neat, but they came at a time where it's like, I want more cool Mortal Kombat things. I'm not even sure if the new games have been, I think Mortal Kombat 9 must have been out, right? But yeah, I didn't really like some of the changes that they did. And again, I think the web service, if this was like another TV show, like a full 30 minutes or an hour-long episodes, I think I would have liked it a lot more. And, you know, of course, if it had a bigger budget. Street Fighter Legacy, this is in the same ilk as Mortal Kombat. This was a fan movie. It was officially licensed by Capcom. Capcom gave them the all clear to do this. It actually stars John Fu, who played Jin in the Tekken movie. This one I was kind of like, yeah, it's about the same as Mortal Kombat Legacy. I thought it was alright, you know, nothing special, very short, but it just showed some promise. In terms of getting live action actors to portray the characters, they did a pretty good job visually. I think John Fu played a much better Ryu than he did Jin. Street Fighter Assassin's Fist. This is basically, I think, the same team given more budget and time. This is another full web series, but I enjoyed this. It is, again, very low budget. It only takes place in like 1 or 2 locales, like indoors and outdoors, and like a mountain, but it had good fight choreography. There is some heart to this. I'm always sad when it's like, well, but we're not going to give you like a budget to do an actual movie or like a real TV series. Like, we're not, no. You just get web series. You get delegated to web series status. I think I would put this up to Master just because it did a lot with very, very little in terms of actually presenting a very focused Street Fighter tale. And there's not really anything wrong about it that I disliked. And, you know, a lot of these are uneven in some way. Like, there's a good amount to dislike here, but overall I still like them. And this is kind of like a tiny step above that. So Assassin's Fist, it's really sad you didn't get a better chance to be something grander, but, you know, I think you did okay. King of Fighters Another Day. This was an anime, like, 1 episode of an anime, essentially, that got released with King of Fighters Maximum Impact 2, I think. And it's okay. I'm gonna put this immediately into, like, kind of... No. Its animation is very cheap looking. There's not a lot of movement. It's just basically Rock Howard's No Good, Really Bad Day, where he just goes out on night in the town to get Terry, like, milk or some shit. I honestly forget, but I remember watching this being really disappointed with it because I love the Fatal Fury anime so much. And when this came around, this was like the first King of Fighters anime, like officially licensed thing. And it's just kind of nothing. I don't know why they didn't get the go-ahead to make a full Maximum Impact animated movie. Why not? Those games are selling really well. You know, you could still have cheap animation, but like do a bigger tale. Like, it's kind of a nothing thing, but I can't say it's garbage. Tekken Blood Vengeance. This would be in garbage if it wasn't for the last 20 minutes, which raises it to amateur, I think, overall, because the last fight, the last 3-way dance between Kazuya, Jin and Heihachi's so fucking good, but the first hour of it is so lame. It's two completely different movies. It's like they're making one movie with like Elisa and Zhao Yu and Panda and stupid new guy made up OC, and they're just doing nothing for an hour. And in the last 20 minutes, they're like, oh, we should actually make this into like a cool thing. And then the Mishimas have like a big brawl, and it's awesome. It's so awesome that it raises it that high, but I would put this in garbage otherwise. It's almost they expanded a silly filler episode of a Tekken anime and just stretched that out into a full hour and called it a like a animated movie. And like, no, that's not why. What? And I think like some people said this was Harada making a thing to like because he hates the live action movie, which he's like, you know, a founding member of the Tekken team. He's been working on it for years. He has the right to dislike it that much, but then you made a thing that's like almost as uneven enough that I have it on the same level, because this is at least consistent in its quality and that it's not the greatest thing ever. But this is like horrific in the first hour, but the last 20 minutes are so fucking hype with some of the best fighting animation that like it kind of equals out into being an amateur. King of Fighters Destiny. This was not the anime I wanted. This was a really bad CGI series that was like 87,000 episodes, but they're only like 8 minutes long, but there's like 10 minutes of credits and like ads and commercials towards the end with really low budget creepy CGI and animation, like uncanny valley shit. There is some silly stuff in there that's pretty entertaining, like the recreation of Geese Howard fighting Jeff Bogard, but that's like one isolated thing. I want to say 87,000 episodes. I think it's something like maybe 18, 20, I don't know, but they're really short. I don't know why this thing was created, but I did not like it. So yeah, it's not even loser, it's garbage to me. I would rather watch the live action movie than this, honestly. This was just kind of a waste of time. So now we're getting into the ends of it, and we're getting into the Mortal Kombat animated movies of the recent years. I have been pretty vocal in that I think Mortal Kombat Legends Scorpion's Revenge, which a lot of people say is like one of their favorites, I don't particularly like it all that much. Great animation. I don't know why Scorpion has a weird reptile brow. I don't understand what they're going with that. But it's super violent. The fights are super entertaining, but its story is just all over the place because they didn't focus on just one thing. If this was a Scorpion origin movie and then it like kind of goes into like a big battle that he has after he's transformed into, you know, a demon hellspawn, like getting revenge just for like on somebody, maybe not quite Sub-Zero yet, but has some sort of thing he needs to defeat. But no, they're like, let's throw the first tournament into it as well. But Scorpion can't win the first tournament because he doesn't, so it's Liu Kang. And then they just throw Scorpion's story in at the very end, like in the last 2 minutes. Oh, it's against Quan Chi, of course. It's just such messy storytelling. It's really unsatisfying. But visually, it's really strong. Like, you know, the acting is good. The voice acting's like, you know, really up there in terms of adaptations in general. And I really want to like it, but it's just a mess to me story-wise. Is it on this level? I'm looking around. I think it's just amateur then. I think I can't, like, looking at these other things, I remember being more unsatisfied with these than this. Overall, I'd say the percentage of things I liked still outweighs the negative. It's still like a really disappointing entry because I want to like it so much, and it just let me down in terms of having a satisfying conclusion. Speaking of unsatisfying, Mortal Kombat Legends Battle of the Realms. This is without a doubt the worst of the 4 animated Mortal Kombat WB movies. Yeah, it's just garbage. There are some fun battles here and there. A lot of characters appear, but they try to combine like 3 games in one. I remember the last 10 minutes just being painful because I had no idea what was going on. I don't know what they were doing. Like, this is the second movie. Focus on Mortal Kombat 2, maybe Mortal Kombat just 3 at that point. But no, they tried to put in like 4 games. The problem was because Mortal Kombat X was the latest game at the time, I think. That or 11. And it tried to cram in like a shit, like the classic Mortal Kombat games, maybe even a bit of the 3D ones, and then the modern NetherRealm trilogy or quadrilogy or whatever the fuck we're at. It's probably the worst pace and the worst story, but still really good animation, voice acting, music, blah, blah, blah. The production values are good, but everything about it is bad. Like, this is on the same level as The Journey Begins. I'm sorry. That's how I feel. Mortal Kombat 2021. Honestly, I'm kind of a defender of this movie. Listen, it's got problems for sure, but I thought it was going to be way, way worse. I was like, this is going to be dreadful. Listen, we all hate Cole, right? We all hate Cole Young. This is known. It has some of the best fighting in any of these movies, like bar none. I really like Sonya. I really like Kano. I really like Liu Kang and Kung Lao. Some of the violence is like some of the most satisfying shit you ever saw. I really like Reptile in this movie. Just thought he was cool looking. I was excited watching this as it was going on. Yes, I would have loved it if Cole wasn't in it. I would have loved if at least set up the tournament a bit more, and then kind of like really led into that, like, which is what the next movie is going to be doing. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, this was like a huge disaster. No, it wasn't. Like, it was like the most successful streaming movie of all time, and of that year that it produced. It was like a big pandemic year. It's 2021. Yeah, like, it did really, really well. I'm not saying that like that means it's good or anything, but I was just like, that's a lot better. Don't know where that would actually put it. I liked it better than Tekken and DOA and all this stuff, so I'm gonna put it down here at Master. I'm happy enough with that. I'm excited to see if they can do better with a sequel. It's got a different writer for sure, the same director, I believe, and Cole is in it. Hopefully they de-emphasize with him, because I don't think you can make that character interesting now or anything, but like, I'm excited to see where this goes. I want more Scorpion. I want like more Sub-Zero, Noob Saibot. I want more Raiden and Shang Tsung. It has a lot of potential to be something like better than what it is, but I thought it was a really good start, but it was uneven. There's some pacing issues I really had with like the last like 10-15 minutes, but it still has some of the most satisfying action out of any of these things. So I think out of all these, this is my biggest hill to die on, because I know a lot of people hate this thing, and that's fine. You can hate it. I can't go one of these tier lists without one of these things being controversial. I think that'll be the one. Mortal Kombat Legends Snowblind. So this is a weird one because it just jumps forward in time quite a bit, and that it takes place way, 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 way after Battle of the Realms, but it focuses on another Legend story, but doesn't try to do too much. Focuses on Kenshi and Sub-Zero, and way in the future where Kano is basically a Mad Max villain, and was just really interesting. Like, they swung for the fences with like a weird premise and scenario, and I think they were really successful. Also going to put this up at Master because I really enjoyed this. It did feel more like an episode of a show. Like, if there was a show that was based in this particular Mortal Kombat timeline or way in the future, I would have really liked that, like a little 10 episode thing. And then that's it, like, tell that tale over it, because there was a lot of potential for more storytelling, but maybe it was too much to cram into a movie, because the way it's truncated now just feels like there was more story to tell, and it could have been done better in a serialized format. But still, it's really entertaining, and it's odd at first, but then you kind of get into the groove of the story is trying to tell. So I was pleasantly surprised by this one. Mortal Kombat Legends Cage Match. This is the Johnny Cage 80s focused, or early 90s, I think. Probably late 80s, actually, considering the art style and the Miami Vice-ness of this. This is very entertaining for the most part. I think it's a bit too jokey, and I know it's like Johnny Cage is in it, but there's definitely some bits where it lulled. It definitely relies on shock value and language way too much. 40 to 30% of the jokes don't land. They're kind of like nothing jokes, or they're jokes where the show is like, yeah, this was really funny. I was like, no, it kind of wasn't. It just wasn't working for me. But there were some ones that made me legit laugh, like, quite a bit. So it was a little uneven in that regard. Still, I think it had a really fun vibe to it. A really good version of Ashra. Very different from how the game's portrayed her in the past. I was like slightly disappointed into it. I wanted it to be better. I don't think it's as good as Legends by a slight amount, so I'm going to put it back down here to amateur. I think Johnny Cage completely deserves his own like little movie, and I had a lot of potential, but it just was kind of not quite hitting everywhere it should. It seemed like it was going to be a slam dunk to me, especially its art style. Love its 80s like pop art style, so I'll give that up to it. And it's a phenomenal voice cast as well. So yeah, I think it's the second best of the animated movies, and I hope they do more, in all honesty. Finally, we have one of the latest things, Tekken Bloodlines. I and Justin Wong have talked about this quite a bit on TKO. Max has not yet seen this, and we've been telling him it's like, this has some of the, equal to any of the other things I'm talking about, has some of the best fighting sequences in any of these. Problem is that it's really kind of drab when that isn't happening, and they're trying to squeeze all of Tekken 3. It's only 6 episodes, which I don't understand. If this was 10 episodes, I could see it being much, much better, because no one gets anything but Jin. It's just Jin the entire time, trains with Heihachi, meets 1 or 2 other characters during the tournament, and that's the end of the show. You're just like, okay? If they had stretched it out with a few more character building things, like Jin being friends with Zhao Yu in school, Jin trying to acclimatize to being in like a school setting. I think there's like a lot of potential for that stuff. Show Harang like training himself for the big tournament, and then he sees Jin fighting one day, and he's like, "Oh, that's my rival." There was so much more they could have done, but it's like the 6 episodes really, really hamper it. I'm also not a big fan of the art style and the general CGI animation. Like, it's rough. I don't know why they do those weird shadows. They're ugly. I don't understand. But it's entertaining. I don't think I can put it at this level, though. I think it's around still here. It's still a kind of a disappointment for me. If there's a season 2, which I still don't think has ever been confirmed yet, correct me if I'm wrong, I'd like to then view those as like its whole thing and then like reevaluate that. But just as the 6 episodes, it's not quite the King of Iron Fist at all. It's more like the prince or the butler or the squire of Iron Fist. And that's it. They're all done. So this was the fighting game adaptations of our youth and of our present. There it is. Much like every other tier list, lots of bulk in the middle there. I think godlike, that all makes sense to me. The shit all makes sense to me. It's mine, right? But does it make sense to you? Please sound off in the comments below, like you guys always do. Let me know which of these are hot takes or cold takes or whatever you like. And if there's any other tier lists you'd like me to do in this style, please let me know in the comments as well, and I'll be sure to be working on the next greasy tier list for you next time.